What did the weird kid at your school do to earn that reputation? He baked a cake for the class. It was nobody's birthday or anything. The weird kid just baked a cake and brought it in. The teacher confiscated the cake and brought it to the teacher's lounge instead of throwing it away. Another teacher had a slice, and it had the kid's pubic hair baked into the cake. Never saw that kid again. Okay, starting out hot, huh? Next story. She used to have longish hair. One day she decided to get a pixie cut. Nothing too unusual, so far. What made it strange, however, was that before cutting her hair, she had braided it into a thick, neat braid and brought it to school. That day, she tucked the braid under her beanie and went around to every teacher and acquaintance asking them to pull her hair. Those who complied were met with a surprising twist. They end up holding the braid in their hand while she burst out laughing, cracking up as loudly as possible. Next story. Always wore a different shoe on each foot. Smelled terrible and never brought a lunch. This was a Catholic school that cost a decent amount of money. Turns out he was just really poor, and everyone looked out for him afterward. Another girl was 12 and pregnant, and her mom was 24. Her baby daddy then killed a 7-Eleven clerk with a shotgun and made national news because he said he wanted to know how it felt to kill someone. Next story. She had neurodivergence issues. A bunch of other girls had a bulletin board outside the classroom where they always hung out and posted notes and crude drawings making fun of how other people, including her, dressed and acted. Like Facebook bullying, but before social media was invented. The school turned a blind eye to this, until one day she took a lighter and set the board on fire. Then the school suddenly cared a lot, and she was expelled. Yeah, that does seem to be a bit of a thing. People don't really pay attention until you go overboard to stop it, and then you're the problem. I do find this statement, like Facebook bullying, but before Facebook, a little amusing. In a sad but, kind of ridiculous sort of way, like we're that online. It's like cyberbullying, but in real life. I think we called that just bullying. Next story. Dude ate a lunchbox of ground coffee every day for lunch. No drink, just the powder. And this was at 9 years old. I still wonder sometimes if he survived childhood. Brother, coffee ain't cheap, man. Not only was he probably super stimmed, which, could have either helped or made his schoolwork harder, but you also gotta have deep pockets. Next story. Dale wore only black t-shirts and camo pants every day, had bug eyes, and was small even for a 5th grader. At our annual required school play, he chose, in front of the entire school, to play the kid who gets hypothermia. He stumbled all over the stage, stripping off his clothes because he was so hot, and the teacher couldn't catch him. He fell off the stage into the kindergartners with his pants around his ankles when he finally, dramatically, died. Legend. Next story. I was friends with the kid in grade school, Joe. Joe was losing his baby teeth. He had a crush on this one girl, Carla. He ran up to her in the playground to show her how loose his front teeth were. She called him gross, so he punched himself in the mouth and knocked out 2 of his baby teeth. He then chased Carla with his teeth clamped in his tiny, bloody fist, screaming, "How do you like me now?" He was my hero, but he was sent home. The next day, he came back to school with 2 teeth in a tiny box. He was later sent home for shooting the teeth through a straw at things during class. He would retrieve the teeth, rinse, repeat. What a menace. He is now an MD, happily married, but not to Carla. Next story. We had a kid who would march up and down the halls yelling military marching cadences. He would have his iPod in, and apparently all that was on there were marching cadences. He also never talked to anyone. Every day, all day, before class, marching. Going from class to class, marching. After school, to the bus, marching. All while yelling those cadences. Not saying or singing them, yelling. We were all convinced he was going to shoot up the school. We said hello, 3, 4, razzle dazzle. Bill Murray in Stripes? Gentlemen, it's party time, Italian style. But anyways, yeah, I'm glad the kid is just, a bit quirky. Next story. He was into anime when that was very much seen as for losers. He always wore a Sailor Moon shirt. During a middle school dance, the last song of the night was My Heart Will Go On, which I guess was his favorite song, and he started slow dancing with his arms around an imaginary partner. I hope he's had a good life. Not everybody gets a yes to the school dance. Sometimes you just gotta put your arms out and sing it loud and proud. And you're him, there's nothing I feel, and I know my heart will go on. Are these even the words? Sorry, got distracted. Next story. It was high school. He was a nerd, but not a fun one. He wrote a movie and was carrying the script around the school to show the teachers. He wrote his own autobiography where he wrote in third person and called himself an artist. His mother was choosing who can come to his birthday, and it was high school, so parties meant beer, booze, and second base. Nobody came to his birthday. He is successful, though. Awarded historical book writer. Next story. This kid was a National Honor Society, but never studied for anything. Completed homework accurately within minutes of class starting, just never had to work for grades. I'm talking super smart and gifted. He was high all the time. I don't just mean smoking. This kid did all kinds of substances, and it never messed with his natural ability to just learn things and hold on to the info and then put that into a project or test or something. Maybe not the typical thinking of the word weird, but still weird, as in not common. Dang, wouldn't that be cool, huh? Not the drugs part, but just, like passing classes with flying colors. Perhaps one of the drugs he was using was a little NZT? Next story. I attended a special education school that welcomed kids with various challenges, from mild dyslexia to severe mental illness. Overall, it was a positive experience. Small classes, attentive teachers, and just regular kids being kids, despite our different needs. But there was one classmate I'll never forget. He appeared in our grade suddenly one day and immediately stood out with his unique behavior. Some of his memorable antics included sitting completely upside down in his chair during class, which the teacher oddly never even addressed, creating an elaborate artwork using correction fluid, tip X, on the principal's window, in full view of the entire class. He only stayed at our school briefly. Years later, I was surprised to spot him on television. He was getting a haircut and having a rather strange conversation with the barber. Looking back, I wonder what became of him. Next story. Oh, have I got a doozy for you. So, lots of the weird kids over the years, right? But I sat next to a kid in computer science in 10th grade who was congenial enough. But his story's plot just thickened and thickened and thickened over the years. He was a stocky redhead kid with long hair that made me think of a lion's mane. He was usually pretty reserved, but easy to irritate, and on the one or two occasions he got made fun of enough to explode, he started screaming about his condition called blood vision, where he loses all control and tears apart everyone around him. When people would laugh at him, he'd storm out, saying it was for everyone's protection. I kind of felt bad for the guy. I was a semi-popular dude and tried to extend a helping hand by asking him questions about things he was into and about his condition. He said it was a congenital defect that plagued him all his life and that it was passed down from his mom, but that it helped him with his duties as a werewolf hunter. I dialed back on the questions and kept in arm's length, but I really was careful about not upsetting the dude because this was post-Columbine and he had that 1,000-yard stare. Anyway, after that semester I didn't see much of him. We'd nod politely in the hallway, but I ended up in a class with his goth sister. And wouldn't you know it, she was a vampire hunter. I didn't get close with her, but I remember overhearing her go into great detail about her sacred duties and how she was the only one keeping everyone safe. Then, one day I'm doing the office assistant extracurricular thing, and the office has glass walls all around and commotion starts outside. People are gathering around and I can't see who's in the middle. So I go to see if I can scope it out, but the AP told me to sit still and locked the door from the outside. I eventually see that the dude was getting wailed on by some other kid and the sister was on the side yelling with her eyes closed, presumably casting spells. Security there, kids hauled off to their respective offices, calamity dies down, and then I crap you not, their dad shows up for him in a effing wizard cloak and weird hat. He had a shortish gray beard and he walked with a weird gaunt. I only saw him for a second from my AP's office, but I wasn't the only one, and we all talked about it for weeks. I don't remember if that's the last time I saw him or her, but shortly after they were both gone from the school. And I always felt bad wondering how effing awful their childhoods and subsequent lives must have turned out being raised by that probable lunatic. Oh, that is sad. You don't get to choose the house that you grow up in, you know? Hopefully they grew out of it and they're all doing okay now. But on the other hand, I love a little bit of whimsy, you know? Who am I to say what's real and what's not real? I don't mind, okay? Do your thing. Be a werewolf hunter. Be a vampire hunter. Have your fun. I take it back. Don't grow out of anything, okay? You be you. You do your thing. It's not your job to fit in with the world. It's your job to have fun and live your life, okay? Now, that doesn't mean everybody will respect it, but at the very least, you shouldn't be attacked for it. Next story. Ours was a kid who liked to take his shirt off and punching a hole in the can and chugging sodas on our school bus like he was at a frat party. Years later, I took a job as a cook in the cafeteria. My manager said he hoped I stayed longer than the last guy who liked celebrating the weekend by slamming back sodas after poking a hole in them with a kitchen knife. Incredulously, I asked the guy's name. Yep, it was the Pepsi party animal himself. Some people never change. Next story. 14-year-old kid put alligator clips on the end of 2 wires. Attached them to his shirt, then jammed both wires into an electrical outlet during science class. I'll never forget the time slowing down during that moment. I saw 2 sparks travel slowly up the wire over the course of about 5 seconds. I remember the panic on his face as the sparks were approaching, the panic on the teacher's face when he saw it. The sparks hit the kid and all the lights went out in the building momentarily. The lights flickered a few times and the kid dropped to the floor. The kid managed to rip the clips off himself and out of the sockets. He then effing stood up and looked at the teacher terrified. Mainly because he thought he was gonna be in trouble. The kid went to the hospital and was absolutely fine. But yeah, effing mad lad. Next story. He would suck on his markers and get his all face blue. He used to aim his farts in anyone that sat behind him in class. He stalked a friend of mine for over a year. He always made comments that were very disturbing in class, as that a girl in class had a nice chest, and we were all about 10 years old. A few years ago, I found out he became a doctor, a psychiatrist. Next story. In 7th grade, a classmate, E, left her notebook open when she left to use the restroom during math class. Someone glanced over and saw that she had been doodling pictures of herself with a gun, shooting stick figures with the names of people she hated. She never did anything, but we were all a lot more wary of her after that. To be honest, I think she did it on purpose. Next story. Made his own chainmail and wore it to school often. He wore it once, and anyone who was even remotely artistic or crafty or interested in fantasy or gaming gave him attention that he normally never got. And so he just wore it all the time, but the positive attention stopped like day 3. Dang, that is kind of freaking awesome though. I've just recently got into more of the medieval and fantasy type stuff. I really want to go to a Ren fair. If anyone knows of a good one in Ohio, please let me know. I'm trying to really get in the experience. Next story. So I went to a very, very, very fancy elite prep school, like top 10 in the country. Multiple presidents attended. It was New England, yada, yada, yada. Anyways, when I went there, they were going through a bit of a "we are the cool school" stage and had eliminated the dress code. No more coat and tie, you could basically wear anything, sweats even. This change happened about 8 years earlier, so nobody currently enrolled had attended when there was a dress code. First day of 9th grade, a new kid shows up in a coat and tie. Nobody has any clue why. Did he not know? I mean, it's a day-in/boarding school, so he must have seen the other kids. Anyway, he took a fair amount of crap on day 1. Day 2, he's still wearing a coat and tie. Day 3, same thing. Then it escalated. For anyone who has ever been to a fancy prep school with a coat and tie, what it actually means is tan stone khakis, cornflower blue button-down and blue blazer with penny loafers and a school tie. Then take the outfit and ball it up for a few weeks and put it on. I mean, everyone looks awful. Anyway, the escalation was 3-piece suits. Then three-piece suits with bowler hats, and pocket watches. Then on a random Friday, he's wearing an effing tux. Armani, if I remember. Anyway, this went on for 4 effing years, and I think he's a doctor now. You know, if the weirdest kid at your school is just absolutely oozing class, sounds like it really was the cool school to be at. I could never be him. In fact, I have to watch the freaking tie tutorial every time I have to put one on. It's embarrassing. Next story. Kid was just a conceited little a-hole, but also weird. I used to think people used to just pick on him for being nerdy, but all the crap he got, he brought on himself. Like if someone gave the wrong answer to a question in class, he'd call them stupid out loud and crap like that. He was very disrespectful. And when someone didn't put up with his crap, he would go running to the principal and claim he was being bullied, when in reality, it was just people not taking his crap. This was in high school too, by the way. Next story. He wore his long black hair in braids and later dreads. He was white, played in the school band and a little outside of school too. Dude was carrying around a 2-liter of Faygo in his back pocket that he drank all day. Late 90s, JNCOs were his thing, and he was super dorky until halfway through 10th grade and just randomly changed. But people still didn't like him because it was a super homogenous school, and he was like an alien there compared to all the other kids. He just sort of started doing really bizarre stuff after that, like eating slices of cheese he pulled out of his pants, not his pockets, his pants, and saying, this one tastes a bit nutty. Or pulling these really old-timey practical jokes like hand buzzers, sneezing powders, etc., which, to his credit, actually worked most of the time, and just all sorts of things. He wasn't a bad guy, really, just some of the weird stuff about him was related to him absolutely hating bigotry. Most of the popular kids in the school were racist or homophobic, and would fly Confederate flags on their lockers and stuff like that. This was in a blue state, fairly blue area, and he just had the habit of snatching the flags down and trashing them, or call other kids out on their racist stuff and be willing to back it up physically, which seemed pretty uncharacteristic of him otherwise. Then one day he just disappeared in senior year and never came back to school. It turned out the guy was completely playing us all. He disappeared in 2001, before social media, and since he had no friends or relatives at that school, nobody knew what happened to him. A few years later, coincidentally, our friend group converged due to a friend of mine dating a friend of his, and I ended up bullcrapping with him at the bar. It turns out the guy was mostly normal, actually pretty cool, but he had wicked social anxiety outside of his close friends, which turned out to be from another school on the other side of town that he had met at work rather than at our school. Hanging out with them was what changed him to his punk goth sort of style. But that really wasn't a thing at our school, so the other kids still gave him crap for it. Eventually he realized that instead of trying to win them over, he could just try to repulse them so they'd leave him alone. And it worked. Turns out most of the gross stuff he did was staged, like the cheese thing, which was actually in his pocket in a plastic bag with a hole he cut in his pocket to allow him to grab it as if he had it in his drawers. The anti-bigotry thing turned out to be the real him, though. He just had no patience for that. When he disappeared, he was actually having issues at home with his parents, especially his father, who was horribly abusive for most of his life. It turns out that he was already 18, and because of how poor his home and school life was, he chose to secretly enlist in the military and told nobody until the day before he had to report to basic training. He then went to the school office that morning, pulled himself out of school, went home, packed his bag, and said goodbye to his friends. Went home just in time for his recruiter to pick him up before his parents got home, and some years later experimenting with drugs, he somehow managed to help himself through his anxiety, and he wound up being a pretty kick-butt sort of dude, who I'm friends with now. Next story. Odd kid in general, quiet, didn't speak to hardly anybody, ever. Carried a huge duffel bag at all times, and when he sat it down on the floor by his desk, he kept a foot on it, always. Rumors about what he had in that bag circulated, but nothing ever came of it. Once, somebody tried to get his bag and he flipped out, screaming at the kid and smacking his desk. His voice went real deep, like growling instead of yelling. The kid was purple in the face when he finally calmed down. Seeing this, you knew it was a different level of anger. Definitely not kids been teased and had enough kind of anger, like something was wrong. Anyway, we graduated. Forgot all about him until one day I read the paper. He had killed his father and stepmother. During the attack, his dad got a gun and managed to shoot the kid, killed him, and then the dad died from his injuries. 3 total deaths. Kid spent time in the mental hospitals off and on, made me think back to that flip out and remember how I knew something was off, even then. Next story. Had ringworm for a really long time. Lived with older grandparents who didn't really understand how to treat it. We were friendly before that, but the teachers had us all sit further from him and avoid touching him because they didn't want it to spread like crazy. And that just turned him into an outcast and we started to grow apart. I think one of the teachers finally had to make a house visit and eventually the ringworm cleared up, but by then the damage was done and worse rumors spread. I still think about him often. Last I heard, he wrote a children's book about uplifting kids who are different. I hope he's doing well. Next story. My elementary school offered Bosco sticks for lunch sometimes. If you don't know what those are, it's a cheap and highly processed breadstick filled with mozzarella cheese. This cheese was very stringy. You could probably get a few feet of stretch if you really tried. Anyway, one day the weird kid pulled out the mozzarella, swallowed it nearly whole. He hung on to it at the end and pulled it back out, and I couldn't finish my lunch. I was so grossed out. Next story. Took pictures of any girls who wore Converse. Not full body pics, but only their feet. One day someone saw his picture album on his phone and it was just filled with random girls' shoes and feet pics. I wore Converse one day and I was in the library, and he was next to me and caught himself pleasuring while looking at my feet. I refuse to wear them to this day. Thanks a lot, Chris. It's gross. And don't ruin the Chuck Taylors for everybody, huh? I'm kind of in a similar boat, maybe not that creepy or offensive, but in having to give up something that you used to wear or do because you had a interesting experience. I was out on a run last summer. Who are we kidding? It was a walk. But anyways, I was sitting down at a park bench, and this guy comes up to me. And we're having a normal, dare I say, pleasant conversation for a while. I even give him my phone number because I don't think about it backfiring. And towards the end of this conversation, I don't know if it was my specific socks or shoes, but he gets a hankering trying to buy my socks off of me. It gets up to about $300. I keep saying, no, that's weird, it's gross. And I left. Again, unfortunately, I gave him my phone number, so he starts texting me for weeks just trying to buy these specific Nike socks off me. And they weren't even like nice socks or anything, okay? But I liked them. I was fond of them. I had to burn them, though. It was the only way to get him to stop. The lives we lead. Anyways, I say all that to say that apparently you can't wear Converse or Nike Cushion Delete 2. I don't remember what they were, but avoid them. Next story. He had his hair braided like Fieldy from Korn. Started wearing a leather jacket that kind of looked like the Fonz jacket from Happy Days. Then started wearing a Fonz shirt under said leather jacket and just sort of acting like the Fonz. Thumbs up, outburst, too cool for school attitude bit with no one playing along. Eventually, he just started wearing a sock on his arm and calling it Mr. Socko or something during a time that WWE's Mankind was doing this regularly. But he hated wrestling and got irritated if anyone made that comment or connection. Was one of the richest kids in school, but you'd only know if you drove him home or caught his random arrogance towards the poors. Dude randomly invited me to see Metallica when I was 13. He got 2 tickets for his birthday and picked me out of the rocker and stoner kids, and he would try and declare himself the leader of it sometimes. Just really try-hard attention type, but with that rich kid better than everyone's smug aura and undeserved false superiority complex. I bet growing up humbled dude a lot. I tried to look him up a few years ago, but no luck. Next story. Ronnie had always been a weird kid. He was adopted after supposedly a pretty rough childhood, and in hindsight was just acting out. He was basically the token bully bad kid all through my elementary school years. Then came 6th grade. Mrs. Shagog kept several doves in cages as class pets. One morning we're all lined up to leave homeroom and go to our classes, and Ronnie is unfortunately right next to one of the dove cages. Dude opens the cage, grabs the bird, and completely skewers this poor bird with a pencil. Feathers and blood everywhere as the bird flops or attempts to flop as well as you can with your wings as they're pinned to your body with the pencil that is stuck through you. Mrs. Shagog is in tears, and the rest of us are half in shock and half giggling at the absurdity. In hindsight, I'm surprised he never went Columbine on us, but today he's actually fairly well adjusted and living a blue-collar life. Next story. Effed a dog at a birthday party. A party with birthday boys' mother made him invite this kid too. A party the mom would regret that decision greatly. A party that ended before pizza had even arrived, before cake, and before we got to use the bomb slip and slide that my friend's dad made for the party out of the big tarps and sprinklers. That was 30 years ago, and I cannot unhear that mom scream. Next story. I don't know about the weirdest, but there was a girl at my school who wore cat ears every single day. Then she started with this guy, and after a month or so, they both wore the cat ears. During every school event, she had them. I think even in graduation. I just never understood why. Next story. Everyone had to take their shoes off to get their heights and weights measured in gym class, and someone accidentally put this guy's shoes on, and the kid threw a violent temper tantrum about it, chasing the kid who took the shoes around the gym, crying, punching a hole through a window, slamming and kicking the bleachers, and finally, most memorably screaming, "I will F you!" to the kid in a full rage. The whole school made sure he never forgot that moment for the rest of our days at that school. Next story. Was a tomboy in a Catholic school, pre-K through 8th grade, so wanting to play sports, wanting to wear pants, girls had to wear skirts and I hated them. And liking boy things like TMNT, not liking girl things like makeup and jewelry and wearing my dad's folding aviator glasses that were giant on my tiny face. Not watching the generally popular shows at the time, but liking cartoons and eventually anime. Getting 2 lead roles in my school plays that were both male roles. Being content to be alone and getting in a fist fight with boys who bullied me. My mom and dad raised me to be self-confident and stick to my guns, so I was never trying to be weird. I was just enjoying what I liked, and I didn't pay attention to it if it was supposed to be into it or not. Funny enough, the crap that made my life heck through middle and grade school is what earned me my real friends in high school, college, and my general adult life. Just had to survive the first 13 years of misery. Hey man, that's exactly what life's all about. You don't gotta run the beaten path, run your own race, be your own person, be weird, be excited, cowabunga! Might be a little bit more niche of a group, but the friends that you find along the way are going to be tailored specifically to that same sort of weird wavelength energy that you're looking for. Trust me, I know the feeling. I'm a psycho. Next story. Made a VHS tape of himself shoving a plastic toy fish up his a-hole. Then gave the video to another kid whose mom gave it to the principal. The whole school found out and called him fish effer. Yeah, he transferred to a different school shortly after. Next story. He lied a lot. Told people he drank blood and unalived his hamster in the microwave, and he was into blood play with his girlfriend. You wouldn't know her, she went to another school. Then he hurt his mom, stabbing her over 90 times. He did get twatted over the head with a huge rock a couple of months prior, and I always wonder if that caused some sort of neurological damage to him. Next story. All he did was have the first name Erwin, and then some kid in class decided his name sounded like Earthworm. From that point forward, that's what we all called him. He was perfectly normal prior to this, but then eventually, after a while, he began to act weirder and weirder until eventually he was taken away by police in junior high school after a fight with another kid. We never saw him again after that. I feel really bad for him every time I think about it. Next story. There was a kid in my school. Used to carry around a pillow to sit on in class, like a full-size bed pillow. And it was filthy as well. He must have slept on it at night as well, and I had that yellow-orangey color to it. Almost looked like a massive pastry. He left it in an English class, and we are the next class to be in. He came in about 10 minutes into the lesson and burst through the door without knocking and was frantically searching for this pillow, walking around, throwing people's bags around, saying over and over, "Where's my pillow?" Like a scatty mum that lost her cigs. He found it and dragged it out from wherever someone had hidden it and cuddled it like a teddy bear. Well, with what looked like hyperventilating, the heaviest breathing, poor kid. Thing is, apart from the pillow thing, he was a completely normal kid. Poor guy just wasn't allowed to forget that for a while. Next story. Dino Boy. Used to walk around with dinosaur hands, then jump on and attack people. I used to try and stick up for him, walk with him to school and make conversation, but one day he randomly turned on me too. Basically, he jumped on my back and started hitting me, so I stopped making the effort. Works at my local shop now and seems content and happy. We always exchange pleasantries. Next story. His name was Dom, and he was convinced he was a dinosaur. Specifically, a raptor. When I say convinced, I mean he did not break character unless a teacher forced him to. He sprinted to each class and would refuse to eat with his hands or utensils and just would scoop stuff off his plate with his mouth. During recess and gym, he would attempt to hunt squirrels and lizards, but would only catch lizards. Ended up eating a lizard and got into a ton of trouble for it. He later relieved himself in the corner of the class by squatting and pulling his pants down like he was taking a crap, but tucked his wang and balls out the back while squatting because, hey, that's how raptors pee. He got caught not because of the pee itself, but because he yelled at someone for looking at him. Something was definitely wrong with him, but he really wasn't effing smart and came from a wealthy family, so he had a longer leash than most students. Oh, and this was in the 7th or 8th grade. We weren't necessarily children anymore. I can also credit Dom for teaching me that raptors were actually covered in feathers, and not scales like depicted in the Jurassic Park films. Next story. Wore a nuclear cleanup suit to school every non-uniform day. Always got into fights with people as he was just itching to launch into something. I always got on fine with him, but he was like a loaded spring, ready to pounce at anyone else that so much as breathed wrong. He later moved to a certain UK area to be a policeman, where the action is. Ended up in the news of the world because of what he was getting up to at his police station after hours. Then he left the police. And for some years I would often see him on national news in a dark suit in the background when world leaders were visiting London. Next story. Me. I was the weird kid. Our elementary school sold slushies at recess. There was a 5-gallon bucket outside for kids to dump their slushies in when they didn't want to finish them. I came up with the idea that I'd drink from that bucket for a quarter. I earned a lot of quarters and a lot of looks of disgust. Next story. Went to high school for 2 years in Portland, Oregon. Let me tell you, it's the wildest crap I've ever seen. Every day was Halloween. Everyone got along for the most part, but there were 2 fights that ended really weird. The first fight was a football player decided to pick a fight with a tall, skinny emo kid. The football player hit him twice and not much happened. Then out of nowhere, the tall, quiet, emo, lanky kid just one-hits this football player and knocks him out cold. Then this emo kid kneels down next to him and slowly wipes his hair out of his eyes and pulls a razor blade out from under the sweatband on his wrist and carves his initials in the football player's neck. The second situation was one of my friends joined the high school hockey team and for some reason thought it was a good idea to harass one of the other emo kids that day or night. Hot or cold, rain or shine, wore a trench coat to school every day. So my buddy Alex is standing 9 feet from this trench coat kid and tells him he is a weird guy. Alex has also been harassing him for a while now. So anyways, this trench coat kid stops and turns directly to face Alex, unzips his trench coat and a good 12 inches, and puts his hand down to his armpit area and pulls out an effing machete, like a zombie killing machete. Needless to say, Alex never harassed that kid again. Next story. He wore a German, not Nazi, but still, uniform to school. Unironically and more than once. Wasn't in ROTC, wasn't planning on joining the military, and wasn't a Nazi as far as we could tell. He just randomly wore a German military uniform to school his senior year, like 4 times. Next story. There was an autistic kid in my high school who we all thought was weird. And he did get picked on a bit, but only when he was swearing and shouting at the rest of us. But we didn't think he was weird because he was autistic. We thought he was weird because during one of our senior classes in year 10, he started pleasuring himself in the middle of the classroom. Next story. She wore devil horns every single day for a whole 4 years and tried to make men as uncomfortable as possible. I never knew her real name, but she went by Boy Scout. I applaud her to this day. Also had a kid who wore chain link armor for picture day and realized we shared a computer when he made the background his class photo the computer background. Can't remember his nickname, but another legend in my eyes. Next story. I think it was me. I said a lot of weird crap and I can't think of any specific examples though. I won't say I was bullied for it, but I was not included in as many after-school activities as I would have liked. Bonus. My freshman year roommate thought I was a serial killer before we met because he looked me up and realized I didn't have any social media accounts at the time. Next story. Looking back on everything, it was generally just having some sort of mental disability or trauma. Several of the weird kids were actually just kids with autism or something similar. They couldn't react to new situations correctly. For example, as a 5th grader, we switched seating arrangements every week, but I was asked to always stay in the same seat the whole year because for the special kid, having new seatmates was just too upsetting. I didn't get why this was the case and just thought it was his preference. Around 8th grade, I figured out it was a mental disability thing, and I felt really bad resenting him so much and protesting the seat arrangement sometimes. But as an adult, no, that's totally normal behavior. The 9-year-old wants to sit with his friends and is getting left out. That sucks. And 2, I must have been generally a pretty nice or polite kid. Otherwise, they would have picked someone else to sit next to him. The only outlier I can think is that the kid had brought a gun to school in high school. He was generally a nice kid, just giga edgy, and always wanted to be the one that took things too far, but people thought he was cool for being a rebel. The gun was a few steps too far, apparently. ETA, I'm realizing another possible explanation is that I was borderline special needs, at least in the eyes of the teacher. Well, I'm going with the, I'm just very polite explanation. Next story. Guy rumored to have tried to F his cat. Yeah, the more and more I hung out with him, the more I realized he might have actually effed that cat. Also, the cat did not like people at all. You could tell it was being effed with. It bothers me deeply when people take out their frustrations and issues on their pets. Next story. Poor kid got tired of being made fun of and just decided to start crap with anyone who even looked at him funny. He started, and subsequently lost, every fight he got into. He would even lash out against kids who felt bad and made an effort to be kind. He was later expelled for making one of those lists. I hope adult life has been gentler to him. Next story. I was the weird kid, so here's a list. I tried to found my own Team Rocket and hung up poorly made recruitment posters. I got a hoodie and tried to hide my face because I thought if they didn't recognize a fat idiot, they would just accept him as a cool kid. I wrote my crush a love note on the back of my test, which I'd doodled on. I picked a fight with a 7th grader, as a 3rd grader, and he went very easy on me. I tried to start a one-man baseball team until I realized I couldn't both throw a ball and bat it, so I stood around on the batter's mound, waiting for literally anybody to throw a ball at me. I waited for the school bus, then tried to race it to where it stopped, making me miss every ride home ever. I told people my mom was a robot and my dad was in jail. Those were my exact choice of words. I kept making up tall tales of why I didn't have homework. I climbed up the side of the school building from the inside. It was a tall ceiling. I had a sonic phase where I'd listen to Reach for the Stars and wildly sprint across the playground until I inevitably either vomited or fell down so hard I was mangled by concrete. Every single break period. I did literally F all in class and just doodled on everything, including myself. Someone kicked my Lego building once, so I threw a standing desk at him. It was a small desk. It was 3rd grade, and I was bullied a lot, but I'm 100% positive it was a necessary evil because there is no way I was allowed to be left unchecked. Next story. Usually they were unwashed, angry, and hissed at people. One girl was due to her wearing mom jeans daily and trying really hard to be the brown-nosing teacher's pet, but even the teachers didn't like her. Some guys were the weird ones for wearing trench coats and being very incel-like. Next story. He would wear a tie to class like a Mormon would when going door to door. He basically made that his entire personality and would throw tantrums when he was told it was weird to wear a tie and dress shirt to school when he wasn't a part of anything that even requested it. And I don't mean baby tantrums. I mean full-blown slurs being used, threatening violence and murder, one time grabbing someone's hand and biting his finger so hard he had to go to the hospital. Somewhat unrelated to all of that, after he started college, he got arrested for diddling a 9-year-old and went on to blame the effing child for dressing that way. Ugh. Okay, well, a lot of them are pretty silly. Some of them are downright disgusting and disturbing. But anyways, guys, that concludes our stories of weird kids at your school and how they got the reputation. If you have any stories that you would like to share, maybe you know a weird kid, maybe you were the weird kid, feel free to drop those down below because, of course, we like reading them. And as always, thanks for hanging out with me, and we will see you in the next one. Okay, bye.